So if you've made it to part 2, you're definitely the curious programmer. So let's go and continue to look at what's going on in this code here. So let's just press F11 to step in. So there's this create fragment thing, and we've seen that before. So create fragment is all these special things that we're doing. So let's just look at when these things are called. So we create these CLMNPIO properties of this object, and let's just put breakpoints in here, and then at the end of this we dispatch this, we dispatch this thing, whatever this dispatch is. So let's just continue here, and okay, so these are actually functions that will be called later on. So we have this thing called block, and we have a bunch of functions on this thing. CLMNPIOD, which stands for Column PIOD. Who knows? Looks like it's just, yeah, I don't know. So we've got this thing called dispatch dev, and we pass in the block, and we give this thing called create fragment.name. Okay, what is create fragment? This is create fragment, this function, and this function has a property called name. You can put properties on name functions, but it's not very often you see that happen. So we do this thing called dispatch dev, and dispatch dev takes in this type and this detail thing, which has some of this information we previously defined, and then we dispatch a custom event which will be handled somewhere. So it's of type Svelte register block. And let's just see where that's listened for. Not sure where that's going to be listened to. We'll get back to that. So we dispatch this custom event, and the detail contains this information. I like the way that Svelte is using custom events, native events, to pass information around. Right, so we've got this fragment with this information here, and then we do this options.target. So hydration is when we then update the DOM with information from probably server-side rendering or something like that. But here there's no server-side rendering, it's just the initial population. So options.target, not going to find that, let's put a breakpoint in there anyway. And let's continue. So if there is a hydration, we do this fragment.l. And L, what is L? Let's jump around the code a little bit. My laptop's too slow for my brain. So L is actually hydrate only works if the comment was compiled with the hydrate true. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's continue here, and we do this fragment.c, which is what we actually create the DOM element here, and then render it to the. Actually, we don't render it yet. We just add location information, which we've seen before. Right, and let's continue. So add location, we've seen that before, we'll just get rid of that. So we've created this element now with C, and I've got this options.intro, nothing there. And I've got this mount component, and it will actually do something finally. And so, okay, let's just step into that. I'm fascinated to see what this does actually. So mount component takes our component, which is the app, and it has a target and has the anchor. So the target was defined if we look at this previously. So we go into our app here, main.js, and the target is the body here. So we're just putting it straight into the body, and I assume it's this body here, the index HTML. Right, so let's continue our step through. It's not that, it's a bit long, but it is not that bad. It's only 300 lines of code, and it's like the basis for a lot of the future things that we'll do with the framework here. Right, so we extract the properties from the $, and then we call this let's continue to here, creating all these variables. So we do this .m method. So m is mount, and we've got this thing called insert dev. Got our target, which is the body, and this is the element and anchor. It's interesting to know how this comes direct from the compiler. So that every time you compile something differently, we'll have different things in here, and it's interesting. So these things here will come from the compiler, depending on what is in the template. So for example, if this was something else, like an H2, then this would be an H2 in here, right? So let's just continue. So we've got our anchor, which is undefined, got our H1 node, and I've got a target. And so we do this dispatch dev again, and we'll remove the breakpoint from here. Well, we don't have a breakpoint now. So we dispatch another custom event of type DOM, Svelte DOM insert. Really love the way that they're using these custom events. Very big fan of native events, so I am. So we dispatch that, and then do this insert, and we've got our body, our node. So let's just see what that happens there. So we've got target, body, and then I've got insert before H1 anchor null. So let's just do F11. That's native code, of course. A lot of times when I'm writing native code, I'm using things like inner text and stuff like that, but this is just more flexible because it's sort of modifying what would be existing in the side of the DOM. So we've done this, and we're just going to press F10 here, right, and then continue, and we'll just start removing some of these breakpoints, and then we've got our callback that comes in, add vendor callback. So we create this callback here, and just continue here, and then we've got this thing called after update, and we'll just remind ourselves what after update is. It's this array here, probably of DOM functions that we called, and the add vendor callback is this. We don't have any after updates, so this course will not be called in this sense here. So let's just continue, and flush looks like it's going to be the end here. So flush is okay, we've got this thing called scene callbacks new set. Okay, and do while dirty components, which is nothing in there. Let's put a breakpoint in there. All these breakpoints will be offset, of course, once we change the code. Okay, so let's just continue. While binding callbacks.length, there's nothing there. Render callbacks, nothing there. Oh, there is one, right? There's this thing. Callback scene callbacks dot has callback. So that callback was this one actually. On mount. Okay, let's just remind ourselves what on mount was. Oh, it's defined here. Only the hardcore devs will be still watching this video. Right, so there's an empty array there on mount, lifecycle stuff. Okay, let's just press F11. On destroy. Okay, so it resets anything that's been set up before. Update scheduled false. It's quite a lot of effort to render Hello World, but don't worry, Rich has got us covered. There's a reason for all this stuff, believe you me. So set current component and the parent components are defined. Set current component, so continue. I think that is almost it. So that was a big init function here, and then we dispatch another event called Svelte register component, and the component contains this app, and then a tag name, create fragment, options name. Okay, I think that's it. Have we missed anything? Let's just go through it quickly here to see if any other functions that could be called. Very jumpy. The next video will add a variable and see how that changes the output to the code for the series of compiler videos. That'll be an interesting function to look at. We probably understand like 50% of this code right now. Right, let's just press F10, F11. So what is all this stuff? Let's include preload.js. Oh, it's a Chrome extension stuff. Go away. Okay, well that concludes this video, and the next video of course we're going to start modifying compiler options and stuff to see what changes. Eventually we'll look at the actual compiler code on Svelte. Thanks so much, bye bye.